Welcome to One World Countless Story podcast with me, Selena Novello. Hello and welcome. I'm so excited that you are here. Thank you so much for all of your support so far. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast. I am so excited to share another podcast episode from my podcast, One World Countless Story. Today, I am interviewing Jada Wallace, and I am so excited for you to hear her story. She talks about a whole bunch of different things and some of her experiences. One of the challenges she experienced in her life that's ongoing is her anxiety, and also just some of the challenges she experienced with her identity as she grew up, and she was just so open and vulnerable about everything. And also she talked about her career and what she's interested in doing, which is directing films and helping others share their story. One thing before we get started is she let me know that there's some construction going on in her house, so there is some occasional banging and things going on in the background, so I'm going to try to eliminate some of that the best that I can, but I really want to share her message as it's so important, so I don't think the audio matters that much, but I just wanted to give that warning that there is some occasional banging and construction going on in the background, but again, the message is so important that it doesn't matter and it's going to be just as good. So let's get right into this interview. Jada's smile is the most contagious thing ever. Every time I would jump on a call with her, because I've never actually met her in person, her smile would just brighten my day up so much. So you have to check out her beautiful smile and see how she's just so bright, and I just love it. So let's get started with today's interview. Introduce yourself and let us know if there's anything important that we should know about you.
Hey, I'm so excited, Selena. Thank you so much for asking me to come. I'm so happy. So my name is Jada Wallace, and I have grown up in Mississauga. I'm currently studying media and communications at the University of Guelph Humber, which is super exciting. I would like to be a movie director when I'm older, so I'm working towards that. And I love to volunteer. I love to give my time to building my community and helping others and learning about others. I love conversations like these. So I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy you're here too. And your interests are just so cool. And I haven't found a lot of people that want to be a movie director, or not a movie director. Was it a movie director?
Yes.
Yeah, a movie director and be in that scene. So I think that's so cool. And I'm excited to hear a little bit about what you've been doing to reach that goal. But to start off, let's just start with why don't you tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Okay, that is such a good question. I think I often tell people I don't remember a lot from my childhood.
Fair enough.
Which is so funny. I'm just my memory is so bad. It's so funny. But I grew up with 5 older brothers. And so literally I'm the youngest out of 6 kids. And my parents are so hardworking. My mom works as a PSW and my dad works in restaurants. And so I remember growing up and they were kind of always at work. So I just kind of was raised by my brother. I remember walking to school with them early in the morning. And it was really fun. People always ask me what it's like growing up with 5 older brothers. And I'm just I'm not a tomboy, surprisingly. I'm very girly. But they're funny and constantly annoying. But they're also so inspiring. I feel like they've done so many important things with their lives, and they have such these vivid dreams, and they know how they're getting there. And just each year they're just taking things off their list. And I definitely follow in that direction. I'm just I know what I want to do. I know how to get there. And it's just about getting through it. I definitely learned that from them. And we definitely learned their hardworking personalities from our parents. So that's kind of how I grew up. I grew up in the church as well. I'm a Pentecostal Christian. And that, I guess, it really inspires me to be loving and kind to others, despite anything, despite how people act, or despite how the church has been in the past. I just that is one of my values in life, is just to be kind and loving and spread happiness to the world.
That's so awesome. So I have a couple questions off that. So what was it? Was there some challenges living with 5 other siblings. Like I've got 4 siblings and I know sometimes I was like,
Yes, absolutely. I think the biggest challenge is the washroom. We have one washroom in the house.
wow.
And I remember, and everyone's like, oh, girls take the longest to get ready. That is complete lies. Okay, boys take so much longer. I remember getting up in the morning and we all had to be getting ready for school or work or whatever. And I would have 5 minutes. I would have 5 minutes in the washroom. I'd be the last one in there and we'd have to get out of the house. And also, when they are here, they are constantly irritating. There's like no work getting done because there's always a conversation to be had about something. Uh, I think the best part was that I never really had to cook for myself, so now I don't really know how to cook. I'm always just like, I have someone to do it for me.
Yeah, that's like with me too. I'm the second oldest, but I still like have a really hard time with cooking. I'm just learning how to do it, but I can totally relate to that. So that's so awesome. And was it hard being the only girl, or were you just okay with that?
I was okay with that. Very spoiled. Well, people say I'm spoiled. I feel like I'm not too spoiled. But no, I enjoyed it. I think they're amazing. I always wish that I had like a twin sister and then it'd just be us and then my brothers, but life works out the way it does.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing you said when you were talking about your childhood is that you were part of a church and you always are trying to be kind and, just put good, positive vibes out into the world. So can you tell us some examples of things that you've done to do that?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I think a huge part of that is volunteering. And also in high school, especially, I joined like every club that there was. And I was like on sports teams and constantly just trying to create connections with other people in order to be kind of that light in their lives. I love to smile and laugh, as you pointed out. It really just like it warms my heart. I think Dolly Parton has a quote that like, if you see someone without a smile, put yours on their face. And I'm just like, that is how I decided to live my life. But I think specifically, I've done. I think the most like powerful thing that I've done was really small, but we had a reading club in my community center, Reading Buddies. And there's a lot of refugees and immigrants in my community. So when they come to Canada, a lot of them don't know how to read, don't know how to communicate properly. But I've grown up in a home where everybody was constantly reading to me or we were reading together. It was really powerful for me to be able to read to little children who just were in a new environment, didn't really know what was happening. And now they're like much older and I have these conversations with them and I'm like, you were like so little and didn't know. And I think that was one of my favorite things that I've done. I feel like that definitely made me happy and I hope it made those kids happy.
Yeah, that is just so sweet. And hearing you talk about it, it just sounds like such a great opportunity for you to just help out and give back to the community, like you said you love to. So that's so awesome. My next question for you is there one thing in your life so far that has been like your greatest challenge? And how have you overcome it, if you have? Or you might still be working on it, but if you have overcome it, let us know.
That is interesting. I think sometimes when we think of challenges, we think of a specific event in our lives.
Mhm.
But all my life, I have kind of, I don't want to say struggled, but I've dealt with anxiety. So I'm like, so even before the pandemic, like going to meetings, going to class, like just small activities in my life, it would just be like so hard for me to do it. I'd be like, I'm so nervous to do this thing, or I get really anxious. And I think I'm still working through it, of course, but I think with like one of the biggest things in my life is having schedules and always being prepared for something.
Yes.
And it really helps. I think also just meditation, yoga. I know I'm like, it's just it helps me so much, and I've grown. So I think high school is when I first started to like it became overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that was when I was introduced to all of these different coping mechanisms. And now it's so much better. And I don't have to consistently worry about what's going to happen next or how I'm going to do something. I understand that like I can find peace within myself. And then whatever happens is what happens. I don't have control over the future. And so you should settle with it. And whatever you can change, you do your best to change it.
Yeah, that's a great way to live. And I'm wondering, how did you get any help when you felt your anxiety getting overwhelming, or what did you do to find these mechanisms that help you today?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I went to a Catholic high school. So we had a chaplain that I became really close with. I was always like helping her and stuff like that. So she's definitely a person that I could go to when I was feeling anxious. I had such amazing teachers. I think thinking back to high school, when you're there, you're like, oh my God, they're so annoying. They always want me to do this and that. But now that I look back, so many of them are my mentors now. I still keep in touch with them because they understood. They're kind, and they always took that extra time to like help me out. One of my teachers are a big reason why I've started meditating and why I also like teach meditation at times in different workshops for her. Because she incorporated it into her classroom, and she said, no matter how much we may think it's a joke or not helpful, she made us, and she was like, you do this, at least give it a try. And she was always of that idea that you need to at least try something and give it like a real try for a few months
Yeah.
before you write it off in your life. So that was a really huge thing. And then also finding like my passion, be doing drama class, and those teachers being like, you have this talent and you can do what you want to do. You just have to like put your focus into it. And like that was like reading and stuff like that, and finding those kind of ways around constantly just sitting there and not doing anything and just like being in my head. That was a really big thing. And so, yeah, so I feel like finding mentors who understand. Also, my school had a counseling service that I constantly went to because it was really, it's easy for me to create a to-do list, but then it's hard for me to actually put it into action.
Yeah.
So they really helped with that. They're like, this is what you need to do. This is how you get ahead of your brain. You don't allow it to overtake you. And that was really powerful for me. So yeah, and even now I do counseling just to kind of help me. Like sometimes you need someone to help you sort out your life a little bit, and that's totally okay. There's no shame in that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate. Yeah, I have anxiety as well. I've had it since I was really young as well. And I'm definitely like always trying to schedule and plan, and like the to-do lists are endless. Like I'm writing everything down, and then the best part, crossing it off. Sometimes I'll like go in and rewrite the stuff I already did, and I was like, yeah, I did that today. So I definitely know what you're talking about. And so I'm wondering, like, you've done so much work, and I think that's great. I think if you are listening right now and you're dealing with anxiety and you have the resources to get help from others, counseling, therapy, like I am pro counseling. Like I've gone since grade 10 and I'm still going strong, because I think sometimes it takes someone who's not in your environment or who isn't always there to just kind of give recommendations, or maybe try thinking about like this. And I mean, mine just asks such great questions, and I'm like, think of that. That's a great suggestion. So I think that it's really important that if you can, to reach out and get the help, and there should be no shame attached to it, because it's completely normal. Lots of people go, and it's just a great way to get out of your head sometimes. So I definitely agree with that. But I'm wondering, like, what was the hardest part about your anxiety? Because I know, like, from experience, I work on it, but sometimes, the 1 minute I don't work on it, it slips in, and it can be really, really hard to cope with. So I'm wondering, was there like a point where, your anxiety got really, really bad, or just, snuck back in there, anything like that?
So definitely when I'm like, if I fall off of my schedules for days, I'm just like, I get really down on myself. And
Yeah.
I think that makes me feel like, oh my gosh, if I don't do this, then I won't be successful. I won't have this happen. And also just I think for a long time, it stopped me from doing things that I really loved because I was very scared, not only of like if I would be good at it, but other people's opinion of me.
Yeah.
For a long time, I like didn't do theater and I wouldn't like put myself in positions that I really wanted to be in because I was really nervous. And I think now it happens, of course. Of course, I want to like say something to somebody or I want to do something and I really feel that push, but then I'm like, what if they're like
Yeah.
like they think I'm annoying or they think but I think now one of the biggest ways I'm just like I get over that is if I'm in class and I have something to say and I'm like, this is important. I want to add it to the discussion. I'm like, I have to say it in my head. I say it in my head a few times and then like hand up. Like don't even think about it. Don't think about what anybody else is gonna think, how anybody else is gonna react. And just I think being in the moment is so important. But definitely in high school, I didn't do a lot of the things that I wanted to do, and I stopped myself from so many opportunities because I was very nervous.
Mhm.
And I think that and of course it comes back. Of course we have those times where it's like a day, a week, and then it's just everything it feels like it's falling apart.
Yes.
But now it's you have to take it one step at a time, one moment at a time, and that's really how you have to think about life.
Yeah, it's so true. I'd love to talk a little bit about, I think like fear of the judgment of others and, how that affects people. Cause like, as you just said, it's really hard because, we're so, I mean, I've experienced it too. You're so afraid to do anything because you're like, what if someone thinks this about me? What if someone thinks that about me? So I'm kind of curious to see how you kind of overcame that in your head and anything you want to add to that topic because it's a big topic, but
Yeah.
I think it's important because a lot of people, especially with social media, feel like they have to be perfect or present themselves a certain way. And so I'm curious to hear your opinion on all that.
Absolutely. So I think so growing up in the church and having my dad even as a pastor and a minister in the church, it really complicated things for me because as much as church is supposed to be this like judge-free type of environment,
Mhm.
oftentimes because you're meant to live a certain way,
Yeah.
people will judge you when you don't. And so I think with my confidence with my body head growing up was just very bad, but like completely annihilated because I couldn't necessarily wear what I wanted to wear or wear what I felt comfortable or even be creative
Yeah.
because there were like these restrictions. And then I think also just the idea that our society is just very anti-Black. And so the way I wear my hair, I would constantly get comments about it. And it wouldn't even be like, your hair is ugly today. It'd be like, why does it look like that? Or how do you get it to look like that? What is that? What are you doing? Is that your real hair? And I'm like, it's just really inappropriate because it just kind of makes you rethink. Like if you think my hair is beautiful, you can say that. But if just all of the other questions around it, it makes you growing up at least. It kind of gives you this weird idea of how you're supposed to look, especially getting certain reactions to certain styles and looks. And then different reactions,
Yeah.
and then also having that like the piece of like people telling you what you should and shouldn't be wearing and how you should be wearing stuff
Yeah.
definitely did a number on me. And then also expressing my identity and then just being an ally of the queer community. I was just like, I think a lot of those things and those judgments from the church had seeped in, and I was like, I could not express myself, I could not be myself, and that was really hard. I think that had really contributed to a lot of my anxiety growing up and just a lot of my sadness of just being like, I don't know how to present myself to a society that does not love me for me and does not understand me for me. And I think now growing up in an era where everybody's just like, screw the rules. Like, we
Yes.
don't care what anybody else says. It's so important. I think it's so important to have those like, even if you look at famous people or influencers as like inspiration, it's so important to have those bodies that are not super skinny, that look like real bodies on the internet. And I think that is a huge that made a huge impact on how I felt about the way people looked at me. Because when you're young, you think with every comment, you're like, oh my gosh, everybody thinks the same way. That's not true. There's like people who don't care about what you look like. And
Yeah.
you are the only one that has like, you're the only one that it matters to. You have to live with yourself the rest of your life. And so
Yes.
I think now I just adopt that to my personality. I'm like, I love God and I know that I have my personal relationship with that. And I can also have an identity as a queer being. I can also be myself as a Black woman on this planet and be comfortable with that without having to care about what anybody else has to say about that, because I'm the only one that has to be comfortable with me. And that was I think the one thing that really is helping me now specifically, because for a long time I could not express myself the way I wanted to.
Yeah. No, I love everything you said. And I think it really comes down to like finding who you are and just being you, which I think in your circumstance was extremely hard to do. And I know there's others who are in similar positions as you where they don't know how to express themselves, or if they can, or if, their parents will get mad, or what what their community will think about them. So I just think it's like such an important message. And I'm so glad that you opened up and talked about that a little bit. So thank you so much. I wanted to ask you a little bit, you touched on it a little bit, but what has been your experience with racism? Have you experienced a lot being here, or anything you want to add on to that?
Okay, I want to add in a little quote. I love Dolly Parton so much. She
Okay.
says, figure out who you are or find who you are and do it on purpose, and just do you on purpose, right? When you walk into the world, be yourself because you have to. I just wanted to
I
say
love
that.
that. I love the quotes you're throwing in. It's awesome.
But yes, oh my gosh. So I do I have grown up and I still live in my community in a predominantly Black community, but also kind of half South Asian. So I'm very used to seeing different cultures and different people. And that has definitely formed the way I think now. Because I'm like, whenever I see something new, I want to learn more. I don't automatically go to judging it. I'm just like, let me learn about it. But definitely, I think personally, I've experienced racism, but in like the microaggressions, as I was talking about, like when people will ask certain questions, they don't understand like what they're asking is racist because they're saying it to a Black person.
Right.
But I've definitely experienced it in that sort of way. And then of course my family has experienced like just full on, people will say things like I know statistics, fake statistics will say stuff like 1 in 3 Black men will go to prison, and I have 5 older brothers who've never been to prison, who've never been in like activities like that.
Mhm.
And it's so weird when people will say like, oh, it's a miracle that you guys all turned out to be a certain way. And it's like, is it a miracle?
Yeah.
I'm like, of course we're very grateful and we're very happy for the upbringing that we had, to know that we didn't have to do anything that was like abnormal. But it was just, I think those very weird kind of ideologies that people will have, they will constantly say it to you. And it can be disheartening at some times. I think also, weirdly enough, my experience with like systems in this world, specifically like police, has been such an interesting vibe, because I've grown up seeing my brothers in cadets in the army, and a few of my brothers are law enforcement now. And so I write, and it's like and they will open up and express the racism that is like embedded in our law enforcement system. But it's also like there's so many nuances of how our world kind of runs. And so of course I could say like I've experienced racism and I felt uncomfortable in certain situations. But I think for overall, like, I'm so grateful that I've been able to kind of just shift my mindset into being like, I don't have to internalize what people say to me, or even how they say it to me. I can just completely almost ignore that and be like, I am going to be me because I am allowed to be that person.
Yeah.
And my family are the people that they are because we are resilient, and not because of any of the crazy ideas that other people have. And so I think a lot of my life I've spent kind of ignoring the racism instead of like facing it, which I feel like if you experience something so embedded in our society, however you decide to deal with it is appropriate. I think constantly, especially during the Black Lives Matter movement, people were expecting all of these Black people to come and teach others and be activists. Some of us are not. Some of us are not meant to be the people at the front of the marches or stuff like that. We're just meant to live our lives and be an example through our lives and how we do that. And I think I really stand by that. And I really appreciate all the different parts of our community that make us who we are, and the different cultures and types of people that really contribute to us being just so special. So that's,
Yeah,
I hope that answered it.
Oh, that did. Thank you for sharing. And I'm very similar to you, where I like to like learn. And when I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is, I never judge firsthand. Like, I just think that's the worst thing to do ever, because I think it robs us of sometimes meeting some really great people if we just automatically assume things about people. And so I'm just curious. I go in curious, and I just love asking questions. And I'm so grateful that you were so gracious with this question and answering it so greatly. So thank you. I wanted to talk to you a little bit, as you said you were an ally with queer. There you go. I'm sorry. My cues, they just get all mixed up. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what you've done to support that community as well.
Oh, absolutely. So I think one of the most important things I've done is actually with youth culture. During June, we had like this conversation about the 2S LGBTQ plus community within corporate spaces and within workplaces. Because I think it's so sad and it's so wrong that people are discriminated against by anything, by their abilities, by their sexualities, and like it doesn't make sense to me. But so I think we had this very open and honest conversation with workers from like TD and different companies, and we're just able to kind of create this space where people knew that they can walk into their workplaces and be comfortable in who they are and how they live their lives without having to be judged. And that was one of my favorite things that I've done. I think other than that, just in my life, I have lots of queer friends and I love them the same. And I think being an ally for me just lies within, I think it's so hard when I'm saying like, oh, like I'm a Christian, and people have that reaction. And I'm like, I know, I get it. And I really believe in bridging that gap between how the church has treated queer people in the past and how they treat them now, and just kind of bringing that unity again, because that it like being oppressive is not what the church is supposed to stand for at all. So it really breaks my heart. And I think that was one of the first reasons why I was like, it is so important for me to stand up and to say something when I hear people being disrespectful or being homophobic, because so for so long we've oppressed people and made them feel like they are not supposed to be who they are. And it's just completely unfair, because as Christians, we are supposed to accept each other as we are, because that's how God made us. And so that is me. I love the community and I love being an ally, even Indigenous people. I think just the expense of their culture and the genocide that Canada has taken out, it's been so disheartening to hear about. And I think constantly being that person that you can come and talk to me, you can ask me for help, I will be there, I'll be by your side, it's so important. It's such an important part of my value system and my personality that I do.
Yeah, no, I just love that so much. And I think we all need to lead a little bit more with just accepting everyone. And I think that like it seems so silly that people were discriminated for these things. Like it breaks my heart too, like especially with how, in Canada we treat Indigenous people, especially. Like it breaks my heart to think that that's how our our older generations were treating people, and for a lot of us in our generation, we're just like, that's not acceptable to treat people like that. Like, everyone, like you said, everyone has the right to be who they are. And, sometimes people aren't going to accept that, but it's when you just continue being you. And I think there's so much power in everything that you've said. So I wanted to thank you for just being so open and sharing everything. And your youth culture talk, I was on there. It was amazing. And it's just so incredible that there's so many cool spaces where now people can open up and talk about their experiences and how it's affected them. And I already know that you talking about your experience is definitely going to connect with someone and help them through their journey as well. So I just wanted to take the time to really thank you, and just being so open and honest about everything. So that's been so awesome to hear about. I want to kind of shift the position of the conversation a bit and kind of move into your career and your passion of, like the film industry and all of that. So I kind of want to hear how that like all started, how you started like loving film and directing and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'd love to talk about this. First, I want to say thank you for opening up a space where I could talk and I could share my story, and hopefully touch someone else. So that is so important. I think you having this podcast is important.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But oh my gosh, film. So I think it started. So growing up, I wasn't really allowed to watch TV or film, and I just loved. I fell in love with reading, and I fell in love with finding people's stories through their words. And that was really just such a cool thing for me. Like, if I wasn't outside playing, then I was inside just with a book. And that was so important. I think grade nine, I think right before my grade nine year, I constantly volunteering. I was at my library, and TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, they have like people that come around to different communities and they'll make short films there. And so because someone was like, oh, we get volunteer hours, I was like, oh, I'll be there. I'm coming along. So I remember going, and there was just like this small group of us youth. I went to school with some of them I hadn't met before, but they taught us how to use cameras, how to tell a story. And we ended up telling the story about the generational gap between us and our parents. And that was so, it was kind of this, I don't know how to say it, like analogy for my life, because my parents had felt like the film industry was so influential in the bad ways that they didn't want me to open up to that, and they didn't want me to see that, which is a lot of our generation thinks even now that TV and social media is like very influential and influencing their kids to do bad things. But there's a whole other side of that film industry that is about education and teaching people just about other people's lives and telling these interesting stories that you don't have to read a textbook to understand. It's like in these creative and interesting ways. And so talking and hearing other people's experience with their parents really made me feel like I was less alone. And I was like, that I think I feel like now it's clicked, like that is the meaning of television. It's like, it's not necessarily to distract us or to make us like provocative or whatever it is, but it's to make us feel less alone, to understand someone else's story, to connect with that. And there's so many different like visual ways to do that. And it was just like, that was really what made the difference for me. And I remember in that moment, we would like go around our community center and be like, hi, would you like to be in our film? And people would talk to us about their experience with their generation gap between their parents and what their generation understood and doesn't understand about us, which is really interesting. But so I think I left that program knowing that I wanted to be in the film industry, but not understanding how to do that. And just kind of, I went about my life as normal. And then and then I joined drama class, and that was really interesting. My teacher was so amazing, and she really would always be like, you're amazing, Jada. Like, you write these pieces and you perform them in front of the class, and I love it. And I remember just being so happy and about having that reassurance from her. And then my leadership class, we often focused on what we want to do in the future. And so I remember telling my teacher, like, oh, I think I want to be a director. Like, I want to be a movie director. And she immediately connected me with like one of her producer friends, and I was able to start working as a production assistant. So definitely like at the bottom of the team, the one that gets people's coffee or like helps set up the set. But it like, and I think the first set that I'd ever been on was actually a PSA about it was Black Lives Matter, but from the point of view of children, and they were talking about the world that they deserved. It was so powerful just being in that room. The director was a female, the producer was a female, and knowing that this is a male dominated industry and that being the first experience that I had in the industry was so powerful. I probably would not want to be where I am right now if it wasn't for them. And that was so powerful to me. And so now with everything that I do, I want to open up this possibility of creating movies that make people feel less alone and make people feel like they're understood and their stories are being told and they're being represented appropriately. And so now I still work as a PA whenever I get the time. But in school, I'm doing a media and communications. So it's like film and journalism and social media and marketing. And it's all of this like mixture of things. Just so that I don't want to be too narrow-minded. As you know, I love to learn about different things. And so I think I picked this program because it's so broad and I get to learn about so many different things and how they interconnect and how they intertwine, because I'm like always working. I love to do something. So if I feel like if I'm not directing, if I'm not working, then I want to be able to be like, I'm going to be a journalist for the day. I'm going to be a marketing agent for the day. Which is, I think, the beauty of the program that I'm doing now. And I've made a few short films. I feel like they're not out yet, but I love to use my camera and go out there and create these ideas. But yeah.
I love your answers so much, and I connect with it because that's what I'm trying to do with this podcast, is really having a space for people to share their life, their experiences, things that were, really, really hard, things that were really, really great. But it's really that feeling of not feeling alone, because I know so many, and you commented on this too, so many of us feel alone in our journeys. And, I know with my anxiety, it sometimes like makes that 10 times worse, because it just like spiral. And it's hard to get out of that place where it's like, oh my gosh, I just feel so alone. Like I'm the only one who's experiencing this. Like we kind of get into that rhythm in our heads, at least I do. And so I think it's so important that there's people like you and who just want to share other stories and make sure that they come off the way that they want them to be represented, and just all of the great things. And I really love your story about how, the meaning of what TV is, and how, there is bad. We can acknowledge that, but there's a lot of good that you have to look for and create as well. So I'm just like so pumped. And I just love how you're like not putting all your eggs in one basket. You're like marketing here, social media here. And I love it. I love it so much, because I often do the same thing. But one thing, as soon as your films are out, like let me know. We're going to be sharing it. I'll have you back on here. You can promote them, because like I want to support you in any way that I can. I love everything you do. So yeah, that was just a little bit off of what you had said. It's so important that I think we share our stories and our struggles, and that because it has a bigger impact than we could ever know. A lot of time people will never say anything, but the one time they listen to your episode or the one time they watch this TV show changed their life forever. So I think it's just like so awesome. And you said you're in university right now. So where are you going to university?
I'm going to the University of Guelph Humber. So it's a mixture of like Guelph and then the College of Humber. So it's like a degree diploma program. So I'm hoping that at some point, right now we're doing a lot of journalism, a lot of like essays and interviewing other people and stuff like that. But hopefully it gets more hands-on and I can like use cameras and stuff like that soon. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that'll be exciting. So is that later in your program, or is that, yeah?
Yes, so after I specialize, I think I'm going to go down the videography or photojournalism route. After I specialize, then I get to pick courses that specifically cater towards like what I want to do in the future. So for right now, it's like very general, very open.
Right. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's so awesome. So is there anything else you really want to talk about before I have like four final questions? But if there's anything else that you want to touch on or talk about, I'd love to dive into anything.
I love that you're like very open and to doing everything. And that's so cool because I think as we're moving and as time is going on, technology is growing, I think being innovative and being able to have these skills that you can like put together are so important. And I love podcasts. So I'm like so happy that you're doing one. I have to listen to more episodes. But yes, I think I just wanted to say that it's so important to develop skills that you can merge with other skills and constantly be open to saying yes to doing things, even when you're like, this is not what I want to do. I don't understand this. Just be open to starting a new job and learning something. And I feel like I have to take my advice right now because I'm like in this job and I'm like, I want to move. I want to do something more. I want to feel connected to other people, feel connected to this earth. I think sometimes when we're doing things that we're not meant to be doing, our brain keeps telling us like you need to find that connection to something that like feeds you and that inspires you. I just want to say that.
No, I definitely know what you're talking about because like for me, I'm like still trying to figure out exactly like what my passion and goal kind of thing is. And it's like sometimes I give this advice and I'm like, I need to listen to my own advice, you guys. Like, guess what? I'm not perfect either. I'm just speaking from I know it's gonna come. It's being patient. And I this actually reminded me of one question I want to ask quickly before the other four. It was just like is it difficult to kind of start at the bottom, or do you feel like that's really important for you to learn and then keep growing in that way?
Oh, I think it's so important. I think it's so important that I feel like before you're the CEO, you have to just be a part-time worker. You have to understand the intricacies of the job and how people kind of work together and interact together in a workforce before you can be like, I want to direct everybody and tell everybody what to do. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, before you're a director, you have to be an actor. So you understand what the actor is going through. And I'm like, I think I'll definitely at some point go down that path before I end up being a director. But I think it's so important. I love actually working as a PA. I love shadowing directors and producers and kind of just looking at how they interact with others, how they do their jobs. I think for one, it's interesting to me. And it's like the least amount of work. I don't have to really do anything crazy, but yeah, I still get to really see the environment that is there. And I think also paying attention to like the good and the bad parts of your industry is so important because I think sometimes we can get so caught up in the idea like I want to do this and this is what's good, this is like right, that we don't recognize that some people in this industry are overworked or they don't get paid nearly enough for what they're worth. And then it's like, so these are my problems, and when I get to the place that I want to be, this is how I'm going to change it. This is how I'm going to be the difference in my work industry. So I definitely think it's important to start from the bottom, hear what people complain about, and really that when you're like one of the workers, you get to hear all of the drama and be like, okay, what do we want to replicate and what do we want to like
Yes.
not really have on our sets or in our workforce. I think yeah, no, I love starting from the bottom and being in this place where like there is so much possibilities. Like there's so
Yeah,
many things that could happen from here.
that's awesome. So what do you kind of want to bring into, you're talking about things that you're like, I do not want this or I do want this. What are some of the things that you see personally that you want to bring into the industry, in the next couple years or however many years it is?
There's so
Or
many
like, I
things.
guess,
I'm
sorry,
like,
let me say that one more time. Like, is there something you would change? Like, I'm just trying to make sure you understand the
mhm.
question that like, is there something you would change or do differently or add to the, directing profession as a
Mhm.
whole?
No, I absolutely get your question. There's so many things because there's so many aspects of this industry. I
Mhm.
think in terms of technology, one thing that we're really growing and I feel like moving towards is like VR and AR realities, and just kind of using that technology to our advantage. I think So there's a lot of power in set design and how it interacts with the characters. And I think using technology to kind of rearrange how we approach that, how we approach where someone lives or how someone interacts with their environment would be so really, really cool. Another thing, I know my industry, like there's a lot of not only like assault behind the scenes, but just like just advantage over people and their time, and the idea that everybody wants to be successful, but not everybody is successful in this industry. So a lot of people that are like that have the power take that advantage over others. And I feel like we have to level out the playing field. Like we need more people of color, LGBTQ plus people, and indigenous people like making the decisions, people who understand their experiences a little bit more.
Yes.
And then I think I always say, like, once you have your writers that are people of color, once you have your writers that understand a specific way of life, then you're going to see that replicated on screen. And so we're definitely in an era of diversity and having these like stories that are from completely different perspectives and just opening up our consciousness through media. And so that's a really big thing. I was thinking of something else, I can't remember. I know there's like technology and having, and so one thing I learned in school, I actually have a class that's like just about working with people and working in groups. And at first I was like, this is like a useless class. Like,
Yes.
But as I go along, I see and I understand how so many people are so used to being independent and being like, I have to do this on my own, because our society is very like self-centered. And I think it's so unfortunate when we come together in groups, instead of like taking advantage of how you can use someone else's strengths and then use your strengths and put them together. Instead, we almost like always have like this conflict. And so I think one of like this really cool thing that we did was like our PI index. I'm not actually our predictive index is like it's like this test that can tell you how you act within a group, how you act within yourself, how you act as a leader. And I think using tests like those can really change the way a set is created. So I know a lot of people will be like, you have to know people, you have to see people in the industry, and then if they like you, then they'll add you to your team. And of course, that's so important. Like compatibility is so important, but also like using people's strengths and like scientific kind of data that will tell you how you will work together, and then creating your team around that. And it decreases the favoritism and specialties in the industry and creates groups that will make good films. I think that would be pretty cool. I feel like that's something to try.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I'm so excited. I just can't wait to see what you end up doing with all this. And I'm going to have to have you come back on, once you are maybe, I don't know, soon, because I just love talking to you so much. And it's been so much fun. And I'm excited to see what you bring to the industry. And I think that you're so right. There's a lot of stigma and there's a lot of favoritism, and but there's ways now that we can actually work towards getting better at all that. So I'm so excited for you and for the industry, because I just think if there's lots of people going in like you, it's going to be so amazing in a couple of years. So that's awesome. Okay, so let's do the final 4 questions. These are like my favorite questions that I save to the end. So the first one is, what is some of the best advice you've received and from whom?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. I have to really think about that. I feel like when it comes to advice, I love to listen to everybody's stories and hear how they did something, and then I kind of just I take what's useful for me and adopt it to my life.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've never really recognized like specific advice from people. I know that one of my favorite quotes, I forgot who it's from, but it's like, laughter is the best medicine. I think if you take a break from anything and you give yourself time to just laugh at something, and then you feel refreshed and you can go back to your work better. I'm just really, I don't know if there's like specific advice that has been like, it's completely changed my life, but there's so many amazing people in my life that every time they talk, I know that I could take something that's inspirational,
Mm.
and that's productive to my life. Oh, I'm so sorry that I don't have like a
No,
specific
no, no, it's
person.
okay. It's okay. It's all good. This next question is very similar, but it's flipped. So, what is like maybe some of the worst advice you've received? And again, if there's nothing that's specific, maybe like not the worst, but like what's
That's
some
funny.
bad advice in general? Like if there's something that first comes into your head.
That's a good question. So, okay, constantly, actually, within school, within this industry that we hear is say yes to everything. And I love it. And I love the idea that I think it's the meaning is like be open to new experiences.
Yes.
But I think it can be really harmful. I think when you say yes and you overload your time and your energy with just doing work and then everything else becomes a chore to you. Everything in your life ends up being like, I have to do this, so I could do this, so I could do work. I think I think really taking time for self-care is important. And sometimes that mindset of being like, just say yes or just do it. They need to see that you're a good employee can be very harmful and hurtful to people. I feel like that. I think it's good advice, but it's bad advice in the same at
Yes.
the same time.
The meaning, the idea behind it is great, but the actual
Yeah.
thing. And I'd love to hear, maybe some advice that you would give to someone who is overworking and, doesn't take time for themselves. What would you say to someone like that?
I would say breathe. Like, I promise you, if you like take a step back from all of the work that you have to do, everything that you feel like is completely necessary, and you just breathe, I feel like a lot of the things, your mind will start to be like, oh, okay, so this is actually necessary, and all of this is like I can do it if I want to, but I don't have to do it. I think taking on too much work can really ruin our body's like rhythm and how we interact with the world. So just taking a moment to really reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your inner being, and be like, this serves me. Like I want to do this because it expands my abilities. It's helpful. It's interesting. It's like, all right. And then being like, of course, there's going to be things that we have to do that are not going to be helpful or they're just going to be plain boring.
Mhm.
But also being like, having like that balance in your life is so important. I think
Yes.
finding your balance is good.
Yes.
That's the quote.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's so awesome. I think, yeah, we are kind of in this hustle culture where it's really not serving us. It's really not good for us to like just go, 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 which I've done multiple times. Just go, 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 go until you're burnt out and then you have nothing to give. And I always think, I always think of these like buckets, right? And I always say like, make sure your bucket is filled before you say yes to another thing. Because I think it's so important that, we don't run out of steam because we want to show up in our best way possible. And if we're tired and exhausted and overworked, how are we supposed to do that? So I think it's a really important message. And I'm really excited that more and more people are starting to talk about not killing ourselves to just get certain results. So I thank you for talking about that. Okay, my
That's a good one. That's a good one. Like the buckets, I remember learning about that in school. I'm gonna adopt that. Make sure your bucket is full
yes,
before you pour
yes.
into someone else's. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's a book. I think there's
Yes, I
a
think
book,
there
and
is.
I think like that was like something they taught us when we were young, but like
Yeah.
toss that out because who has time for that? But it kind of comes back when you experience
Yeah.
burnout or things like that, and you're just like, yep, that's true. Make sure you plug in your charger too, like the phone analogy too, like all that kind of stuff. I
Yeah,
love that. Yeah.
that's
So
a great one.
the third question is, what is some advice that you would tell your younger self, or maybe if it's not your younger self, maybe the younger generation?
Ooh, I like that. My younger self was very I think she's very confused. Right? As I said, I think there were so many different voices in my head that I was confused. I was like, what do I do? But I think I would tell her, trust the process. Things will happen, clarity will come. And I was thinking about this the other day. I'm 18. Like, what is 18? I'm so young. What do I know about the world? But from like being a child till now, there's so much that we've learned. And I think sometimes we even undermine the fact that
Yeah.
we undermine ourselves because of our age. But we know so much and we've learned so much and we're going to learn so much, and that's so important. And so I feel like I would definitely tell her to trust the process and to be to just be calm, be cool, just keep doing what you're doing, because even the bad parts of our lives, they reconnect, and they sometimes can turn out to be good. So I think that's
The bad part of our lives, they're really important too. You know, we
yeah,
want to have the good times, but I find like the most learning comes from the bad times, which is unfortunate, but it's the way that life goes. So that is
that's
good
true.
advice. And even I need to hear that. It's just like everything will work out. Just be patient. It's just great advice all around. Okay, last question. This is my like favorite one. I end all my interviews with this one, and it's very simple. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. What are you grateful for?
Oh, I love that. I'm I'm truly grateful for everything. I'm grateful for you, Selena, and
Oh, thank
inviting me
you.
today. This is definitely the highlight of my day for sure. I'm grateful for love in my life, because I feel like that keeps the world going around, is like falling in love, being in love, and brotherly love, sisterly love, all of those things. And I'm grateful for experiences. I'm grateful that I didn't just stay in my room all my life and read and only experience other people through that. But I'm grateful for my smile and being able to start a conversation even when I'm nervous to do it. And my ability to just ask questions and be open. And I'm grateful for all of the people that are inspiring to me, whether they're inspiring me to do good or they're inspiring me not to follow down their path. I'm so grateful for that. Oh, I love that. I think taking a moment of gratitude is so important.
Yes, yeah. So thank you again so much for coming on today. I have loved our little conversation about lots of different things. We've talked a lot
Yeah.
about a lot of different things, which is so awesome. So I love that. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Selena. I love this too. I'm so happy that I was able to come and able to talk. I'm so excited to hear it when it comes out.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Jada. This was one of the conversations that has mean the most. You were so vulnerable and open about your experiences and things that were really hard for you that you have gone through. And me being curious and just asking lots of different questions about lots of different topics. You were so awesome in responding and giving us your best answer. So thank you so much, Jada, for joining us. I can't wait to have you back on the podcast to tell us all about films that eventually come out and all the cool things that you're doing. So that's it for now.